Hello everyone, a warm welcome to this virtual training series on Microsoft 365 Mobility and Security MS 101. I'm Monica from TechnoFocus and I will be serving as your moderator today. We're glad to have Johan Nickel with us, who will be presenting today's session. He is a certified Microsoft 365 trainer and passionate senior cloud solution architect with great experience in developing and integrating applications with Azure Active Directory. He is currently based in Switzerland. If you happen to face any audio or video issues during the webcast or have any technical questions, please post them in the Q&A panel and our team is here to help you. Now I'd like to turn today's event over to our presenter. Johan, you have the floor now.
Hi and a great welcome to this virtual training series for Microsoft 365 Mobility and Security MS 101. My name is Jochen Nickel and I'm a solution architect for Cloud Identity and Access Management. On this last day, we focus specifically on the management of data governance, auditing and reporting. We structure this module into the following parts. We go through the management of data governance, the management of auditing itself, the management of e-discovery, the whole management around security reports and alerts, and specifically for the preparation for the MS 101 exam in specific. Now, after the short introduction, we will go through the technical discussion about the management of data governance, auditing and reporting. Now we talk about information protection and governance. So there's a basic strategy on this slide from Microsoft, the approach and the principles around that. Basically, it's the four-pillar topic. Know your data, protect your data, prevent data loss, and govern your data. So know your data basically is to understand your data landscape and to identify important data across your specific hybrid environment, for example. To protect your data is to enable you to apply flexible protection actions, including encryption, access restrictions, visual markings, whatever you need for your specific scenario. Then the third point is to prevent data loss, so to detect risky behavior and prevent accidental oversharing of sensitive information, for example. The fourth point is to govern your data, so automatically retain, delete and store data and record in a compliant manner, for example. Knowing your data, protecting your data, preventing data loss and governing your data are really outcomes powered and enriched by an intelligent platform. So there's a common approach to classification. So no matter where the data resides, you have a unified policy configuration and management experience, an analytics dashboard to remediate issues, and you're also able to have the APIs to bring up partner solutions into the whole scenario on that case. So as you see in this image, you see the information protection governance story of Microsoft and its approach, and it's always a continuous process where you start with the basics, refine your approach over time. So that's a really ongoing process and never just make a project and you're done. Really ongoing with change management and all the communication plans and all of that stuff that needs to be in place. There are always common organization questions like working in the cloud. How really can that be secure? That's a typical question about the specific mindset of different people. So because they mean the on-premises infrastructure is per se more secure than the cloud services from other vendors, from cloud service providers. I think, this is my personal opinion, is that Microsoft really gathers a lot of security features to secure the service by design, by default. They gather all the security certifications that are common in the field and do a really great job to provide a really high security with a lot of manpower in it. So you need to find your discussion way with your customer to explain it. There's a lot of material out what you can use for really suitable communication with your customers itself. But let's go a little bit more in deep here for our topic. So specifically, where is my data? That's a really typical question in common discussions, because the people or the organization members really sometimes don't know where the data exactly lives in the organization, on file servers, SharePoint servers, in the cloud, in different services, on the hard disks, on specific USB drives, wherever. So there's really a good way to go there to make a great inventory and to see with the Microsoft 365 a tool set where the data exactly lives, to identify sensitive data in which location it's placed. On the other hand, who manages my data? There's a specific question I always hear, does the administrator really need to have access to specific data? Is there a data owner principle applied already in the organization? Or who is really managing the data in an organization on the different locations? That's really a quite important part. And to get a real great information protection scenario on data governance, you need to know that, and you need to define the correct responsibilities on a data owner principle. On the other hand, who can see my data? This is from the last example. We can transfer that. Is it the administrator? Are there other employees inside of the organization that can see the data, the sensible data in specific? Or is it the cloud service provider? Is it security agency from the United States or whatever? Who is really looking into my data? And I think there's a really good place to educate your users, your administrators, or your customers itself to see who is really accessing the data and who can see it. On the other hand, who can modify the data? It's also a good part to go through a data owner principle and to say, okay, who is really modifying my data, who can access the data and can view it. So you see, this just a few example questions here, what can be asked in an organization for information protection and so on. So obviously this is not a completed list. Go through that and always ask yourself and gather more information in the docs.microsoft.com that provides really a great source to get more and more questions that you can ask in your specific scenarios. For the evaluation of public cloud services, it's critical to understand the shared responsibility model and which security tasks are handled by the cloud provider and which tasks are handled by you. The workload's responsibilities vary depending on whether the workload is hosted on a software as a service SaaS, platform as a service PaaS, or as infrastructure as a service EIS, or in an on-premises data center. So in an on-premises data center, you own the whole stack. And as you move to the cloud, some responsibilities transfer to Microsoft in specific. The diagram in this slide shows or illustrates the areas of responsibilities between you and Microsoft, according to the type of deployment of your specific stack. So if we see here for information and data, SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, on-premises, the responsibility will retained by you, by the customer itself. And specific also for devices, mobiles or PCs, and the accounts and identities. So to keep it very clear, for all cloud deployment types, you own your data and identities, and you are responsible for protecting the security of your data and identities, on-premises resources, and the cloud components you control, which obviously varies by the different service types. Regardless of the type of the deployments, the following four responsibilities are always retained by you. This is the data, endpoints, account, and the access management. Specifically, cloud services or the cloud offers significant advantages for solving long-standing information security challenges. In an on-premises environment Organizations likely have unmet responsibilities and limited resources available to invest in security, which creates an environment where attackers are able to exploit vulnerabilities at all layers. So in this field also the cloud can help the customer or you to gather a better control over your whole infrastructure. To find specific answers about responsibilities, compliance, governance and all the other topics in that field, you can use the Service Trust Portal, which provides you compliance-related information for the different Microsoft Cloud services, audit reports, or specific white papers that contain really a detailed information on the cloud services that are operated by Microsoft. And it's also a great resource for the compliance manager itself. What is the Microsoft Compliance Manager? That's a free workflow-based risk assessment tool that lets you track, assign and verify regulatory compliance activities related to the Microsoft Cloud services. It's part of your Microsoft 365, Office 365 or Azure Active Directory subscription. The Compliance Manager helps you specifically to manage regulatory compliance within the shared responsibility model for the Microsoft Cloud services. It basically provides a centralized dashboard for viewing standards, regulations, and control implementation details, and specific test results for Microsoft Service Assessments. And what you can do with the Compliance Manager itself. So you can combine detailed compliance information Microsoft provided to auditors and regulators about its cloud services with your compliance self-assessment for standards and regulations applicable for your organization. Though this can include standards, regulations outlined by the International Organization for Standardization (ISO), the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the NIST, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, or the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, or many others. It enables you to assign, track, and record compliance and assessment related activities, which can help you really for your organization cross team barriers to achieve compliance goals. On the other hand, it provides a compliance store to help you to track your progress and prioritization of auditing controls that help you to reduce your organization's exposure to risk. And it obviously allows you to produce richly detailed Microsoft Excel reports that document compliance activities performed by Microsoft and your organization for auditors, regulators, and other compliance reviewers. So you see there's a real big bundle available that helps you to reach your compliance and governance goals for your infrastructure. To give you just a few examples of these capabilities, you get the independent audit reports of SOC, FedRAMP, ISO 27001, PCI DSS, and you get really always a clear information on new unarchived audit reports. As you can see here in the slide deck, you have always a good overview, for example here with the Microsoft Azure Dynamics 365 and other online services about the ISO 27018 certificate that was reached on 2019. And what's happening here is it gives you an introduction what the certificate or the specific audit contains and what was reached by Microsoft itself over their cloud services and what they have done, which regulation controls are in place, what they have done to reach this certificate itself. Another example is the Office 365 ISO 27001 column 2013 certificate. which basically contains the following registered activities: the management of information security management system, ISMS, for Microsoft Office 365 services, development, operation, support, and protection of personally identifiable information, PII. So it shows directly which Office 365 services are measured, which Microsoft managed controls are included, and which customer managed controls can be included or are included in specific. The Service Trust Portal is also a great resource if you have some concerns about data protection. It gives you a lot of white papers, FAQs, security reports, penetration tests, risk assessment tools. And as you can see here, you can also see the audited controls, for example for Office 365, which controls what are audited for NIST 800 line 53A revision 4, for the audited controls for 27001 2013, or on the other hand, which controls are audited for 27018 2014. And if we take a closer look and you download such a spreadsheet, you get, for example, the information of a specific control title, like say the contractor AC1. The organization develops, documents, and disseminates to service engineer operations, program managers, developers, and a lot of entities, that its entities compliance and all the stuff is regulated. And then it shows up what's happened if the implementation details are done. So for example, the Office 365 information security policy defines Microsoft policies for Office 365. This document addresses the proposed scope, roles, responsibilities, compliance requirements, and required coordination among the various Microsoft organizations, providing some level of support for the security of 365. So policies are made available to roles identified in the specific section of the Office 365 system security plan via an internal SharePoint site. So you always see the control IDs, the implementation details, and specifically the testing details, and from who it was tested, the specific findings, with a categorization of low risk, medium risk, high risk, and so on. So it's really a great resource, and just take a look at this page, download, and make you familiar with this different resources and information. And specifically important is that you can identify where to find the specific resources. So we have heard about the Service Trust Portal, and now we want to talk about the Microsoft Trust Center. So this gives us specific resources on security, privacy, compliances and industries, provides customer cases, security, privacy and compliance blocks, and specific law enforcement request reports. So you will see here as well a lot of different kind of information. So make you really familiar for the exam and for your practical work, what's happening on the Service Trust Portal and what's going on the Microsoft Trust Center itself. So let's go a little bit more practical. So if you're interested in your organization's compliance posture, you will go through the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. The Compliance Center provides an easy access to the data and tools you need to manage to your organization compliance needs. So you will have a lot of information on it and specific sections. Let's talk a bit about the card section. So when you first visit the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, the card section on the home page shows you at a glance how your organization is doing with data compliance, and specifically what solutions are available for your organization, and a summary of any active alerts. So what you can do there is you can review the Microsoft Compliance Scorecard, which leads you to the specific compliance score solution. It calculates a risk-based score that measures your progress towards completing recommended actions that help you to reduce risk around data protection and regulatory standards. It also provides workflow capabilities and built-in control mapping to help you efficiently carry out those actions. So you can see the specific compliance score, what's happening on protect information, govern information, manage compliance, how you are really working on. On the other hand, you have the solution catalog card, which links you to the collections of integrated solutions you can use to help you for the management of end-to-end compliance scenarios. There are a lot of solution capabilities and tools that include a combination of policies, alerts, reports, and many more things. The third card is the active alert card, which includes specifically a summary of the most active alerts and includes a link where you can view more detailed information such as the severity, the status, the category, and more. Obviously, you're free. You can add more cards or additional cards on this place and showing data about users with shared files, with links into, for example, cloud app security or other tools where you can specifically explore data. Another new tool we can use to simplify the way we manage compliance and to reduce compliance risks, we can use the user-friendly experience of Microsoft Compliance Score. And I want to discuss a few moments about what is the compliance score in specific. The Microsoft Compliance Score is that should help you to understand your organization's compliance posture. It calculates a risk-based score measuring your progress as well in completing actions that help you reducing risks around data protection and regulatory standards. You can use the compliance score as a tool to track all of your risk assessments. It provides also workflow capabilities to help you really efficiently perform and complete your risk assessments through one common tool. If you currently use the Compliance Manager, you will notice that the Compliance Score is now a standalone feature with a simpler, more user-friendly design to help you to manage compliance more easily. The main Compliance Score page is your specific custom dashboard. It shows your current score, it helps you to see what needs attention, and guides you to specific actions to improve your score in itself. So what's going on? What is this help, what you get? This first of all is the continuous assessments. So automatically it scans through your Microsoft 365 environments to detect and monitor the effectiveness of your data protection controls in your system. And it provides recommended actions that gives you a step-by-step guidance to implement controls that maximize your score. And there are built-in control mappings, so that helps you to stay current with the evolving compliance landscape by providing built-in common control framework. The relationship to the Compliance Manager is like you can think of Compliance Score as a simplified version of the Compliance Manager. While the two exist as distinct yet integrated tools, Compliance Score makes it much easier to monitor your overall compliance posture and take the steps how you can improve. It's quite important to understand the key components of the Compliance Score, like controls, assessment, templates, and groups. Let's start with controls. A control defines how you assess and manage system configuration, organizational process, and people accountability to meet a specific requirement of a regulation standard or an internal policy. Compliance Score basically tracks two types of controls. The first one is the Microsoft Managed Control, These are the controls for Microsoft Cloud Services, which Microsoft is responsible for the implementation. On the other hand, the customer managed controls is managed by your organization and you itself, which you are responsible for. The next component is an assessment. An assessment is an evaluation of specific templates that initiates the scoring process for your organization. So assessment group the actions necessary to meet the requirement of a standard, regulation or a law, for example. You can see it also like that, that you may have an assessment that when you complete all actions within it, it brings your Microsoft 365 settings in line with, for example, ISO 27001 requirements. By default, the compliance score provides your organization with an assessment based on the Microsoft 365 data protection baseline and recommendation for reducing your data protection and compliance risks. Assessments include several components like in-scope services, a specific set of Microsoft services applicable to the assessment, Microsoft managed controls, obviously the Microsoft implemented and tested controls, customer managed controls, there are your controls that you manage specifically, and the assessment score is the percentage of the points that are achieved by completing actions within this assessment. On the other hand, we have templates that are provided by the compliance score, pre-configured templates that allow you to create also templates for your own assessments that suit your needs. For example, you can create a template for your business process control or a template for a regional data protection or compliance standard that isn't covered by one of the pre-configured templates. The pre-configured templates for a compliance score are the ISO 27001, 18, 27701, NIST 853, 800-171, and NIST, HIPAA and many other templates are available actually for you in the compliance score. The last component that we need to understand are groups, because groups allow you to organize assessments in a way that is logical to you. For example, you may choose to group assessments by year, compliance standard, service, teams within your organization, or any other way. When two different assessments in the same group are share customer managed actions, the completion of implementation details, testing and status for the action in one assessment is automatically synchronized to the same action in any other assessment in the group. This helps you to unify all the stuff and you can do all the things without duplicating your work. In the next demonstration we take a short look on the compliance score. I will give you an overview and we'll discuss about that with you in a few specific things here. Next we will work with the compliance manager. It is a great tool really to work with because you have a direct overview how your compliance score is if you go through that scenario, and you can directly jump into the improvement actions where you can go through. So you see here all the score breakdowns, all the topics, what's happening, and you can directly jump into the improvement actions to go ahead on this specific topic. For example, we can go down to see the different things what is happening. For example, to use the attack simulator to bring your environment on the run, protect data at rest with customer key, schedule scans and so on. There's a lot of material that helps you to prep your environment to really improve your whole compliance infrastructure inside of this case. Let's just jump into enablement of the self-service password reset. What's going on here? You get directly placed to assign an action to a specific person to implement that. You see how to implement this scenario. You can have the project management on that. You can launch this specific thing. It directly jumps into the right section. You can test the specific things. You can provide a test status that is valid and so on. And you see against which standards and regulations you really apply to it. You can also put additional documents, test documents, documentations on it. It's really a great material with the compliance manager to work through. You get in a complete guided scenario to improve your whole compliance infrastructure inside of this case. So you have also solutions that helps you for that, audit solutions and so on. For example, I can directly work into the audit search to apply different tasks to improve my compliance inside of my infrastructure, what I want to do. Also, I can plan the assessments, use assessment templates as well to build up baselines, to build up different things here for my specific frameworks, and to jump directly inside of a regulation, for example, to create an assessment and see the different factors I need to work on to be compliant against industry regulation inside of that part. That's a really great opportunity to work with. Another option to go through is one of these scenarios. What I have shown is to go to an attack simulation training where you can also run against your internal users to see what's happening. For example, a credential harvest simulation, a malware simulation, a link in attachment simulation. So you have really a lot of great simulations in place that you can work with and to test your infrastructure for different things and to train your users. So I think with the compliance manager and the compliance score, you can directly jump in an active way to be more compliant in that place. Another point is the secure score. It works in the same manner. So you also can directly address this topic. So you are more on the security control topic. Also validated against the industry standards, against other industries. You need to define that. And on top you have the compliance manager and the compliance score, what we have discussed right now. So let's dig a little bit deeper in how we can protect our information. We have already heard a lot about technologies that we can use for that during this course. So we are able to use the sensitivity labels to classify and protect sensitive content. We could use the data loss prevention for identifying, monitoring and the automatically protection of sensitive information. On the other hand, the Office 365 message encryption gives us really a great option to have an end-to-end encryption process that's much better than as-MIME scenario. And on the other hand, we have the Azure Information Protection that we can classify, label, protect documents and emails. And additionally, if it's protected, we also can track the information where it's gonna be opened, who is using the information and such a lot of things as well. So it's really important to understand these protection mechanisms, that you really know with which tool you can do which activity. The next important topic beside of the protection is how we can manage the retention. And in Microsoft 365 we have specifically the retention policies. This can be used for most organizations that the volume and complexity of their data is really increasing daily. Email, documents, instant messages and many more things are growing the data material. So to effectively manage or governing this information, it's important because you need really to comply proactively with industry regulations and internal policies that require you to retain content for a minimum period of time. For example, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act might require you to retain certain types of content for 7 years. On the other hand, we have the reduction of our risks in the event of litigation or a security breach by permanently deleting old content that you're no longer required to keep that. On the other hand, you can help your organization to share knowledge effectively and be more agile by ensuring that your users work only with the content that's really current and relevant to them. Retention policy can help you specifically to achieve all of these goals. So there are commonly two actions: retaining the content so that it can be permanently deleted before the end of the retention period, or deleting the content permanently at the end of the retention period. Retention policy in specific can help you to decide proactively whether to retain content, delete content, or both retain and then delete the content. Apply a single policy to the entire organization or specific locations or users. You can have here a really granular way to work with that. On the other hand, we have the capability to apply a policy to all the content or content meeting certain conditions, such as the content containing specific keywords or specific types of sensitive information. When the content is subject to a retention policy, people can continue to edit and work with the content as if nothing's changed, because the content is retained in place in its original location. But if someone edits or deletes content that's subject to the policy, a copy is saved to a secure location where it's retained while the policy is in effect. Finally, some organizations might need to comply with regulations such as Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) Rule 70A-4, which requires that after a retention policy is turned on, it cannot be turned off or made less restrictive. To meet this requirement, you can use a preservation lock. After a policy's been locked, no one, including an administrator, can turn off the policy or make it less restrictive. After you create your labels, you'll want specifically to verify that they are being applied to the content as you intended. With the Label Activity Explorer in Office 365 Security and Compliance Center, you can quickly search and view label activity for all content across SharePoint and OneDrive for Business over the past 30 days. This is real-time data that gives you a clear view into what's happening in your tenant. The following examples you can use with the Label Activity Explorer. You can view how many times each label was applied on each day up to 30 days. See how labeled exactly which file on which date, along with a link to the site where the file resides. You can view which files had labels changed or removed, what the old and the new labels are, and who specifically made the change. You can filter the data to see all the label activity for a specific label, file, or user. You can also filter label activity by a location like SharePoint or OneDrive for Business, and whether the label was applied manually or automatically. Last but not least, you can also view label activity for folders as well as individual documents. Please note, the Label Activity Explorer requires an Office 365 Enterprise E5 subscription. As you can see in the figure of the slide, you can quickly filter the data to see all the label activity for a specific label, file, or user. You can also filter label activity by location like SharePoint or OneDrive for Business, and whether the label was applied manually or auto-applied. This gives us a great way really to focus on the important tasks of our work and the label activities. Another great capability is the viewing of the label usage with label analytics. Because after you create your retention labels and sensitivity labels, maybe you want to see how they're being used across your tenant. With label analytics in the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center and Microsoft 365 Security Center, you can quickly see which labels are used the most and where they're being applied. For example, with label analytics, you can view the total number of retention labels and sensitivity labels applied to the content. You can see the top labels and the count of how many times each label was applied. You can see the locations where labels are applied and the count for each location. And for example, you can count for how many files and folders had their retention label changed or removed. It's quite important to understand where, for example, the sensitivity label usage comes from, because the data on the sensitivity label usage is pulled from the reports for Azure Information Protection. So a quick side note, that the information protection reports have prerequisites that also apply to label analytics on sensitive labels in the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center and 365 Security Center. For example, you need an Azure subscription that includes the log analytics, because these reports are a result of sending information protection audit events from Azure Information Protection clients and scanners to a centralized location based on Azure Log Analytics service. For the sensitive label usage, there is no latency in the data, so this is really a real-time report, and you can see the count for each top label, point to the bar graph and read the tooltip that appears. The report shows also where sensitive labels are applied per app. So retention labels, for example, are shown per location. The retention label usage report shows a quick view of what the top labels are and where they are applied. So what you can expect from this report in specific, you can see the data is aggregated weekly, so it may take up time to 7 days for the data to appear in the report. To see the count for each top label, point specifically to the bar graph and read the tooltip that appears. The report shows where retention labels are applied per location. As we have discussed before, the sensitivity labels are shown per app. For retention labels, this is a summary of all time data in your tenant, and it's not filtered to a specific data range. By contrast, the Label Activity Explorer shows data from only the past 30 days. To view the label analytics, you must specifically assign to one of the following roles in Azure Active Directory. First one, the Global Administrator, second, Compliance Administrator, third, the Security Administrator, and fourth, the Security Reader. Additionally, note that these reports use Azure Monitor to store the data in a log analytics workspace that your organization owns. Therefore, the user should be added as a reader to the Azure monitoring workspace that holds the data. Let's go short to a simple example how we can view all the content with a specific retention label. From the retention label usage report, you can quickly explore all content with the specific label applied. So first choose a few details at the bottom of the report, then choose a retention label, explore items in the right pane, and for that label you can choose the activity tab to view a count of items with that label by location. You can also choose the items with this label tab, and then you can drill into specific locations. For Exchange Online, you see a list, for example, of mailboxes with the count of labeled items in each mailbox. For SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business, you see a list of site collections and OneDrive accounts with the count of labeled items in each location. So when you choose a mailbox or site collection, you can view a list of items with that retention label in that location. In the next demonstration, we will talk about the label activities and the message encryption topics in version 2, that you get an idea what's going on and what you can do inside of your scenarios in your M365 infrastructure. In this demonstration I will take a short look on the Activity Explorer, on how you can manage label activities basically. You will see here I make a query that a DLP rule matched 1, and you see it here, and specifically that's this DLP rule where I have sensitive video products, and this document what was happening here on the 6th of January in this case. What was happening, that there is an access that the rule, the DLP match what's happening. So you have really a poor control over your label activities at specifically. But you have also, that's the Explorer, what's happening on automatisms. Obviously we have this in the data classification rules included what's behind a label itself. But this is not included right now here inside of the data classification compliance topic. This we need to search in the security, because we implement the control over security Microsoft.com. So if I jump here to the classification, to the sensitivity label itself, and we go through inside of that, one activity is the automatic labeling scenario that we can use inside of this part. And you see here exactly this sensitive video products topic here. What if we go through? We have different things. Let's assume we go through Germany financial data. We want to check for that. We define the specific point, for example on SharePoint. Obviously I need to use a site. So I choose the sites. Let's say we assume the communication side on this infrastructure. Then we say we have common rules, or we can advance that with additional values. We define the high and the low volume. I just take this one, and now I define which sensitivity label applies automatically. So this one label activity, what we can do. Obviously on the other hand, what we have here on the sensitivity labels, let's just break down here that we have the labels itself, and let's assume we just jump into the confidential label here and just edit. And also we see here the different scopes where we go through the encrypt files and emails. That's one action what's going on. Mark the content of the files, and then I have exactly what's happening with this scenario. And that's the great way, and also the label activity, what's behind, what's going on through that. Another example is the OME, what we have here, what we can see in Exchange. There we have the subject includes, for example, a specific project or anything like that. Then the topic applies the Office 365 message encryption to directly have a simple way of encryption mechanism for encrypting the mail. Another option for mailing specific is to include the button to encrypt, just to encrypt the information. That's another great way to work with OME v2, OME rules, and the label activities itself. Another great way to view your label activity is to view the data governance reports. With the data governance reports in Office 365 Security and Compliance Center, you can do the following things and see the following information very fast and quickly. You'll see the top 5 labels. This is a specific report that shows the count of top 5 labels that have been applied to the content. You can click this report to view a list of all labels that have been recently applied to content. You can see each label's count, location, how it was applied, its retention actions, whether it's a record and its disposition type. On the other hand, the manual versus auto apply. This report shows the count of all content that has been labeled manually or automatically, and the percentage of contents that's been labeled manual versus automatically. The third one is the records tagging. This report shows the count of all contents that's been tagged as a record or non-record, and the percentage of content that's been tagged as a record versus non-record. The last one is the labels trend over the past 90 days. This specific report shows the count and location of all labels that have been applied in the last 90 days. All these reports show labeled content from the different sources like Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive for Business. After talking about the data governance options in Microsoft 365, we go to the next topic, to the management of auditing in Microsoft 365 and what we can do here. Microsoft Cloud Services include several auditing and reporting features you can use to track user and administrative activity within the tenant. Examples include, for instance, changes made to Exchange Online and SharePoint Online tenant configuration settings, and specific changes made by users to documents and other items. You can use audit information and reports available in Microsoft Cloud Services to more effectively manage user experience, mitigate risks, and fulfill compliance obligations. And with the Microsoft 365 unified approach, you have it across every Microsoft 365 service. You have a great way to do an audit log search, and you have a seamless integration to power investigations and compliance obligations. With the actual feature set and the future improvements in the auditing, Microsoft is really relying on the context of investigations. So, for example, from the user perspective and what this person really do on the document level, who read this confidential document or change something on the document itself, who had access to this private folder or any specific folder you have defined, or on the other hand, what was accessed on this device, that you can really gather all the information you need about the complete context to bring all the 4 points together. So the user itself, the documents, the folders, and the devices, what they are used on, and what really happens in this infrastructure. In the scope of advanced audit in Microsoft 365, Microsoft has involved a lot of features. So you can really go through a high-value events to power a quicker investigation. So you directly see the most important events in your environment, and you can drill down in a very quick way to see what really was happening, to see the complete context across the whole Microsoft 365 infrastructure. You can see different insights to show the context and the key patterns, how the things are connected, the specific user on the specific document or folder from a specific device. So you see the whole chain, and you can drill down in a really great investigation scenario. On the other hand, there is a longer term retention available to meet specific investigation and compliance requirements. So you have a great way to search for it, to see what's during a specific period of time. And on the other hand, what's a really great scenario is that you have near real-time access to data. So that helps you really to be on time, to go through the complete chain, what you investigate in the specific time frame you want to reach for. So this helps you a lot to get really fast access to audit events for the period you're really searching for. So let's go through a practical example how the process could look like for searching the audit log in Microsoft 365. The step 1 is to run an audit log search. The second step is to view obviously the search results, and a quite important feature is the filtering on the search results, that you get really the information you need for. And the step 4, you can export the search results to a file. So you can use the Office 365 Security and Compliance Center to search the unified audit log to view user and administrator activity in your Microsoft 365 organization. Why specifically a unified audit log? Because you can search for the following types of user and admin activities in Microsoft 365, for example. The user activity in SharePoint Online or OneDrive for Business, the user activity in Exchange Online, specifically Exchange Mailbox audit logging, the admin activity in SharePoint Online, the admin activity in Azure Active Directory, that's the directory service for Office 365 obviously, the admin activity in Exchange Online, like the Exchange admin audit logging, the user and admin activity in Sway, e-discovery activities in the Security and Compliance Center, and several user and admin activities in the following services like Power BI, Microsoft Teams, Dynamics 365, Jammer, Microsoft Flow, and Microsoft Stream. Also, you can analyze the admin activity in the Microsoft Workplace Analytics. And as I remember correctly, you can also do the user and admin activity in Microsoft Power Apps and Microsoft Forms. Another great features provide the alert policies in the Security and Compliance Center. Alert policies build on and expand the functionality of activity alerts by letting you categorize the alert policy, apply the policy to all users in your organization, set the threshold level for when an alert is triggered, and decide whether to receive email notifications or not. There are also a few alerts pages in the Security and Compliance Center where you can view and filter alerts, set an alert status to help you manage alerts, and then dismiss alerts after you have addressed or resolved the underlying incident. Microsoft also expanded the type of events that you can create alerts for. For example, you can create alert policies to track malware activity and data loss incidents. Or they included several default alert policies that help you to monitor activities such as assigning admin privileges in Exchange Online, malware attacks, phishing campaigns, and unusual levels of file deletions and external sharing. Just a quick side note, alert policies are available for organizations with a Microsoft 365, Office 365, E1, F1, G1, E3, G3 or E5, G5 subscription. So, and as always, as we know right now, is that advanced functionality is only available for organizations with an E5, G5 subscription. Obviously keep in mind, take a look of the different subscription levels that you know which features are available. Just a quick overview about the alert policies and the alerts that are triggered when user or admin activity matches a condition of an alert policy. You see this in the figure. The first, an admin in your organization creates, configures and turns on alert policy by using the alert policy page in the Security and Compliance Center. You can also create alert policies by using the new -protection alert CMD-LED in Security and Compliance Center PowerShell. To create alert policies, you have to be assigned the Manage Alerts role for the organization configuration role in the Security and Compliance Center. The second part you see on the figure is a user performs an activity that matches the conditions of an alert policy. In that case of malware attacks, infected email messages sent to users in your organization trigger an alert. The third point is that Office 365 generates an alert that's displayed on the View Alerts page in the Security and Compliance Center. Also, if email notifications are enabled for the alert policy, Microsoft 365 sends a notification to a list of recipients. The alerts that an admin or other users can see that on the View Alerts page is determined by the roles they are assigned to the user. So this is a specific part you can refer to the RBAC permissions required to view the alert section. The fourth point, an admin manages alerts in the Security and Compliance Center, and the managing alerts consists of assigning an alert status to help track and manage any investigation. Basically, an alert policy consists of a set of rules and conditions that define the user or admin activity that generates an alert. A list of users who trigger the alert if they perform the activity, and a threshold that defines how many times the activity has to occur before an alert is triggered. You also categorize the policy and assign its severity level. These two settings help you to manage specifically alert policies and the alerts that are triggered when the policy conditions are matched, because you can filter on these settings when managing policies and viewing alerts in the Security and Compliance Center. For example, you can view alerts that match the conditions from the same category or view alerts with the same severity level. Specifically, an alert policy consists of the following settings and conditions. The first one is the activity the alert is tracking. You create a policy to track an activity, or in some cases a few related activities, such as sharing a file with an external user by sharing it, assigning access permissions, or creating an anonymous link. When a user performs the activity defined by the policy, an alert is triggered based on the alert threshold settings. The second component is the activity conditions. So for most activities you can define additional conditions that must be met to trigger an alert. Common conditions include IP addresses, so that an alert is triggered when the user performs the activity on a computer with a specific IP address or within an IP address range. Whether an alert is triggered if a specific user or users perform the activity, and whether the activity is performed on a specific file name or URL. You can also configure a condition that triggers an alert when the activity is performed by any user in your organization. So the available conditions are dependent on the selected activity, obviously. The next part is when the alert is triggered. You can configure a setting that defines how often an activity can occur before an alert is triggered. This specifically allows you to set up a policy to generate an alert every time an activity matches the policy conditions. So when a certain threshold is exceeded, or when the occurrence of the activity the alert is tracking becomes unusual for your specific organization. If you select the setting based on unusual activity, Microsoft establishes a baseline value that defines the normal frequency for the selected activity. But keep in mind, it takes up to 7 days to establish this baseline, during which alerts won't be generated. But after the baseline is established, an alert is triggered when the frequency of the activity tracked by the alert policy greatly exceeds the baseline values. For auditing related activities such as file and folder activities, you can establish a baseline based on a single user or based on all users in your organization. For malware related activities, you can establish a baseline based on a single malware family, a single recipient, or all messages in your organization. The next part is the alert category. So you have the capability to help with tracking and managing the alerts generated by a policy. You can assign the following categories as shown in the figure: data governance, data loss prevention, mail flow, permission threat management, and others. So when an activity occurs that matches the conditions of the alert policy, the alert that's generated is tagged with the category defined in the setting. So this allows you to track and manage alerts that have the same category setting on the View Alerts page in the Security and Compliance Center, because you can sort and filter specifically alerts based on the category. Mainly the last point is the alert severity. Similar to the alert category, you assign a severity attribute like low, medium, high, or informational to the alert policy. Like the alert category, when an activity occurs that matches the conditions of the alert policy, the alerts that generated this tagged with the same severity level that's set for the alert policy. Again, this allows you to track and manage alerts that have the same severity setting on the View Alerts page. So you have the same filtering capabilities, and it allows you, for example, only to see alerts with high severity. Then the last part are the email notifications. You can set up the policy though that emails notifications are sent or not sent to a list of users when an alert is triggered. Microsoft 365 provides also built-in alert policy that help identify Exchange admin permissions abuse, malware activity, and data governance risks. On the alert policies page, the names of the following built-in policies are in bold and the policy type is defined as system. These policies are turned on by default. You can turn off these policies or back on again, set up a list of recipients to send email notifications to, and set a daily notification limit. The other settings for these policies can't be edited. So as you see here, a few policy examples: potential malicious URL click was detected, e-discovery search started or exported, or an elevation of Exchange admin privileges happened. This gives you also a great powerful default set to work in your environment itself. Under the View Alerts section, you can view a subset of all the alerts, and it provides you different information about the status, where you can use this filter to show alerts that are assigned a particular status. Keep in mind the default status is active. You or other administrators can change the status value. The other option is the policy. Use this filter to show alerts that match the setting of one or more alert policies, or you can display all alerts for all alert policies. Then you have the capability to use the filter of time ranges to show alerts that were generated within a specific date and time range, and as already mentioned, severity and category. The last one is the source. You can use this filter to show alerts triggered by alert policies in the Security and Compliance Center, or alerts triggered by Office 365 Cloud App Security policies, or both. You see here also that Cloud App Security comes in the game, and you can gather all the information from this alert policy way as well. Now we come to the question, who can do what in your organization or in your specific tenant? And Microsoft 365 and Office 365 provide a privileged access management that allows you to follow the least privilege model. The privileged access management allows you specifically granular access control over the privileged admin tasks in Office 365. It can help you to protect your organization from breaches that use existing privileged admin accounts, with standing access to sensitive data or access to critical configuration settings. Privileged access management requires users to request just-in-time access to complete elevated and privileged tasks through a highly scoped and time-bounded approval workflow. This gives users just enough access to perform the task at hand without risking exposure of sensitive data or critical configuration settings. You can enable privileged access management in Microsoft 365, and it allows your organization to operate with zero standing privileges and provide a layer of defense against standing administrative access vulnerabilities. Now that we have briefly discussed the privileged identity management or privileged access management, we can go through the RBAC permissions that are required to view the alerts. The role-based access control RBAC permissions assigned to users in your organization determine which alerts a user can see on the View Alerts page. How is this accomplished? The management roles assigned to users based on their membership in role groups in the Security and Compliance Center determines which alert categories a user can see on the View Alerts page. To give you a few examples, the members of the Records Management role group can view only the alerts that are generated by alert policies that are assigned the Data Governance category. Another one is members of Compliance Administrator role group can't view alerts that are generated by alert policies that are assigned the Threat Management category. The last example is members of the eDiscovery Manager role group can't view any alerts because none of the assigned roles provide permission to view alerts from any alert category. This specific design based on the RBAC permissions lets you determine which alerts can be viewed and managed by users in the specific job roles of your organization. The next topic we need to have a look on is the viewing of Cloud App Security alerts. Alerts that are triggered by Office 365 Cloud App Security policies are also now displayed on the View Alerts page in the Security and Compliance Center. This includes specifically alerts that are triggered by activity policies and alerts that are triggered by anomaly detection policies in Office 365 Cloud App Security. This means you can view all alerts in the Security and Compliance Center. But as I already mentioned, Office 365 Cloud App Security is only available for organizations with an Office 365 Enterprise E5 or Office 365 US Government G5 subscription. Organizations that have Microsoft Cloud App Security as part of an Enterprise Mobility plus Security E5 subscription or as a standalone service can also view Cloud App Security alerts that are related to Office 365 apps and services in the Security and Compliance Center. Similar to an alert triggered by an alert policy in the Security and Compliance Center, you can select a Cloud App Security alert to display a flyout page with details about the alert. The alert specifically includes a link to view the details and manage the alert in Cloud App Security portal and a link to the corresponding Cloud App Security policy that triggered the alert. But it's quite important note on site, changing the status of a Cloud App Security alert in the Security and Compliance Center won't update the resolution status for the same alert in the Cloud App Security portal. So for example, if you mark the status of the alert as resolved in the Security and Compliance Center, the status of the alert in the Cloud App Security portal is unchanged, and to resolve or dismiss a Cloud App Security alert, manage the alert in Cloud App Security portal itself. In the next short demonstration, I will show you how you can work with Cloud App Security and specifically the alerts. In the Office 365 portal, we can see the different alert policies that we can define for the Office 365 specific flows here. So you can see here the elevation of Exchange admin privileges, the unusual volume, and other topics we already discussed in the theory of this module. So the other hand, what we can do is we can provide additional Cloud App Security topics. So we changed to the Cloud App Security section, and here you can also see that we have blocked access from unmanaged devices, already alerts included, activity from infrequent country, and a lot of other things that can happen here in the organization. So we have here additional capabilities to also measure or collect alerts or raise alerts for non-Office 365 services. We can also do some templates that we can get a better look on it. Here's a very specific example. I always like to do that. This mass download by a single user. It indicates sometimes if an employee leaves the company and he just wants to grab all the stuff to take it to the other new employer. That's a good thing we have implemented as well in our infrastructure to see what's happening, or if someone really mass download sensitive information or any other thing. So to do that, it's quite an easy process. I just go here inside and see, okay, this is the title from this template. It's a category threat detection, and I can see here also I can do that in a specific time frame, and the minimum repeated activities, what should happen. Obviously I can define here all my typical rule sets, what we have seen in the Cloud App Security section in Module 3. And here what I want to go through is, I see here create an alert for each matching event with the policy severity. So I can also go to say, okay, I want to have an email, for example, to my security officer, and I can also send an alert as a text message if it's high emergent task. So you see here are a lot of capabilities in the alert section, and I also can define here what should be happened here, for example, as a governance action. So I can, for example, say, hey, the downloads you're doing are too much for me. I suspend the user. I require the user to sign in again. I want that he confirms the user is compromised. I can the manager include in this scenario, and this for different applications. And as you can see here, obviously not only for the Office 365 subset, I can do that also for any third-party application that is included in the Cloud App Security strategy. And I just can create this topic, and there now is active and will happen on that. Specifically, as I already mentioned, the policies that I do here are not Office 365 related. I will not show up in the alerts policy section, or specifically in the alerts part here in that included, because here it's also reviewing or rewriting to the Office 365 Cloud App Security section on it. And if I click here, I come to the same portal as I am. Obviously there are a lot of other things what you can do here. You have a lot of templates included to use your alerts. Just to give you an exam hint, please try it and see which alerts you can define in which portal and what you can do with any other functionalities. As a practical tip, at the end of the audit section, you or another admin must turn on audit logging before you can start searching the Office 365 audit logs. When audit log search in the Security and Compliance Center is turned on, user and admin activity from your organization is recorded in the audit log and retained for 90 days. However, your organization may not want to record and retain audit log data, or you may be using a third-party security information and event management application to access your auditing data. In those cases, a global admin can turn off audit log search in Microsoft 365. Before you can begin, you have to be assigned the audit logs role in Exchange Online to turn audit log search on or off in your Microsoft 365 organization. Because by default, this role is assigned to the compliance management and organization management role groups on the permissions page in Exchange Admin Center. By default, global admins in Microsoft 365 are members of the organization management role in Exchange Online. If you turn off audit log search in Microsoft 365, you can't use the Office 365 Management Activity API to access auditing data for your organization. So turn off audit log search by following the steps in the articles in the web. You can search the audit log using Security and Compliance Center, or when you run the search Unified Audit Log CMD-led in Exchange Online PowerShell. And this also means that your audit logs won't be available through the Office 365 Management Activity API. Now, after completing the audit log topic, we will go through the e-discovery options in Microsoft 365. So now let's discuss what is e-discovery in Microsoft 365. Electronic discovery or e-discovery is basically the process of identifying, delivering electronic information that can be used as the evidence in legal cases. You can use e-discovery in Microsoft 365 to search for content in Exchange Online mailboxes, Microsoft 365 groups, Microsoft Teams, SharePoint Online and OneDrive for business sites, and Skype for business conversations. You can search mailboxes and sites in the same e-discovery search by using the content search tool in the Security and Compliance Center. And you can furthermore use e-discovery cases in the Security and Compliance Center to identify, hold, export content found in mailboxes and sites. So if your organization has a Microsoft 365 E5 subscription that we have heard a lot of times that is necessary for the advanced feature set, you can further analyze content by using the advanced e-discovery solution in Microsoft 365. Microsoft 365 provides the following e-discovery tools: the content search in the Security and Compliance Center, e-discovery cases in the Security and Compliance Center, and the advanced e-discovery solution in Microsoft 365. The content search in the Security and Compliance Center is divided in the following steps. So you can run a content search in the Security and Compliance Center. You can define keyword queries and search conditions for content search. You can view the keyword statistics for content search results. You can also targeted content searches in the Security and Compliance Center. You can export search results from the Security and Compliance Center, and you specifically can increase the download speed when exporting e-discovery search result from Microsoft 365, and you can export content search reports. There are specifically some things you need to know: that you can do unindexed items in context searches. You can prepare a CSV file for a targeted content search. You can use content search in Microsoft 365 for targeted collections. You can use the content search to search third-party data that was specifically imported to Microsoft 365, and you can create reports and delete multiple content searches. You can clone in content search in the Security Compliance Center, and you can specifically configure permissions filtering for content searches. The following table contains links to topics that will help you use e-discovery cases in Security and Compliance Center, where you can use cases to add members who can access the case, place a hold on content locations relevant to the case, or associate multiple content searches with the case, and export the search results from the case. I specifically recommend for the exam that you build up your own cases, work with that, and also use the scripting to add users to hold in an e-discovery case in Security and Compliance Center to prepare yourself for the exam. The advanced e-discovery solution in Microsoft 365 builds on the existing e-discovery and analytics capabilities in Microsoft 365. That's a new solution that's called Advanced e-discovery, and it provides specifically an end-to-end workflow to preserve, collect, review, analyze, and export content that's responsive to your organization's internal and external investigations. It also lets legal teams manage the entire legal hold notification workflow to communicate with custodians involved in the case. When you use Microsoft 365 e-discovery tools to export the results of an e-discovery search, you have the option to deduplicate the results that are exported. What does this mean specifically? When you enable deduplication, by default deduplication isn't enabled. Only one copy of an email message is exported, even though multiple instances of the same message might have been found in the mailboxes that were searched. Deduplication helps you save the time by reducing the number of items that you have to review and analyze after the search results are exported. But it's important to understand how deduplication works and be aware that there are limitations to the algorithm that might cause a unique item to be marked as a duplicate during the export process. So it's important that we know how duplicated messages are identified. The Microsoft 365 e-discovery tools use a combination of the email properties to determine whether a message is a duplicate. One of them is the Internet Message ID, because this property specifies the Internet Message identifier of an email message, which is a globally unique identifier that refers to a specific version of a specific message. This ID is generated by the sender's email client program or host email system that sends out the message. If a person sends a message to more than one recipient, the Internet Message ID will be the same for each instance of the message. Subsequent revisions to the original message will receive a different message identifier. The next property is the conversation topic. This property specifies the subject of the conversation thread of a message. The value of the conversation topic property is the string that describes the overall topic of the conversation. So a conversation consists of an initial message and all messages sent in reply to the initial message. Messages within the same conversation have the same value for the conversation topic property. The value of this property is typically the subject line from the initial message that spawned the conversation. Another one is the body tag info. This is an internal exchange store property. The value of this property is calculated by checking various attributes in the body of the message. This property is used to identify differences in the body of the messages. We need to talk a little bit about the e-discovery export process, because during the e-discovery export process, three properties are compared for every message that matches the search criteria. The message that is exported is known as the source item. Information about duplicate messages is included in the results CSV and manifest XML reports that are included with the exported search results. In the results CSV file, a duplicate message is identified by having a value in the duplicate to item column. The value in this column matches the value in the item identity column for the message that was exported. The graphic shows how duplicated messages are displayed in the results CSV and manifest XML reports that are exported with the search results. Keep in mind, these reports don't include the email properties previously described, which are used in the deduplication algorithm. Instead, the reports include the item identity property that is assigned to items by the Exchange store. The content search feature in Security and Compliance Center allows you specifically to search all mailboxes in your organization. Unlike an in-place e-discovery in Exchange Online where you can search up to 10,000 mailboxes, there are no limits for the number of target mailboxes in a single search. For example, scenarios that require you to perform organization-wide searches, you can use content search to search all mailboxes. Then you can use the workflow features of in-place e-discovery to perform other e-discovery related tasks such as placing mailboxes on hold and exporting search results. Let's say, for example, you have to search all mailboxes to identify specific custodians that are responsive to a legal case. You can use content search in the Security and Compliance Center to search all mailboxes in your organization to identify those that are responsive to the case. And afterwards then you can use that list of custodian mailboxes as the source mailboxes for an in-place e-discovery search in Exchange Online. Using the in-place e-discovery allows you also to put a hold on those source mailboxes, copy the search results to a discovery mailbox and export the search results.
In the next demonstration we'll take a short look on e-discovery and how it could work for you, what you need for that, so that you have a good starting point for using e-discovery.
Now we take a look on the e-discovery functionality, what we have included inside of this place. So obviously we can do all the stuff in PowerShell. I would just want to focus here on the graphical interface. We have this e-discovery section here, what we can directly jump in, where we can create our cases to work on, that we have these ones in place here on this specific point. Then we have obviously the advanced e-discovery scenarios, where we can also put additional cases into the place, that we configure the analytics settings itself and so on. Just let's move forward. I just want to say that the test obviously exists already, and I can jump directly into that. So create a case, obviously on that, friendly name, then I can work on the settings itself. First of all, I can also attach or manage the attorney client privilege settings, where I also put analyzations inside of my e-discovery case itself. On the other hand, what we have here, we can also go through the audit. That's another process, not in the e-discovery, where we set on hold, where we have cases, legal cases and so on, to make the analysis on this topic. We can also directly jump into a search, for example, for specific activities. Let's assume we go for the CEO inside of this topic, what he have done, let's say inside of this part, to
see what's going on with this user. We can also filter obviously on this topic, and we see there down there's all the information, user login fails, for example, data uploads, specific data what he accessed. So you see that is very powerful here on this case, and I obviously can filter that to say I want to have just the accessed files what you have done in the last weeks. So you can directly jump in, see, okay, that's the file what you have done, that's a specific form. So let's take a short look on all the topics here. For example, we take a closer look to this controls purchasing permissions and so on. So you have these topics inside of that. Obviously you can build up retention policies to include that. So that's the working tool in a case of e-discovery case, that you can work with that. Or you put also in e-discovery in advanced the machine learning option that you can include it in your searches, that you enrich with keywords and all of that stuff. Another option is to go through the content search itself to say, okay, I want to have that scenario. Microsoft already builds up a guided search if you want that, but you can build up your own query, your own locations inside of the scenario, and that's really a great work here. Let's say we go for purchasing and we go to all locations and we save and run that topic. We can say that's a test for the moment, it's not a big deal, and then we can see the details after a while here in that case to identify really all the information what we need to have. Additionally, maybe on site if we don't need a complete e-discovery case, but we need to search for something on this specific topic. Now that we have worked through the e-discovery features of Microsoft 365, we go to the next section, to the security reports and alerts. In the Security and Compliance Center you can view the email security reports. There are a variety of reports available in that section to help you to see how email security features such as anti-spam, anti-malware and encryption features in Microsoft 365 are protecting your organization. So if you have the necessary permissions, you can view these reports in the Security and Compliance Center by going to the reports and dashboard. And your email security reports include the following things: your encryption report, for example, threat protection status report, the top malware report and senders receptions report, and a lot of information about spam detections and, for example, user reported messages. So let's go to the different report types. The encryption report shows information about email messages that were encrypted either through your organization's policies or through end user controls. Your organization security team can use information in this report to identify patterns and proactively apply or adjust policies for sensitive email messages. With this flexibility of the new encryption report, you can view trends and take appropriate actions. For example, if you see a high number of email messages encrypted by users, you might want to add an encryption policy to automate encryption for certain use cases. As another example, if you have a number of encryption templates available but no one is using them, you might explore whether users need training for that feature, for example. The threat protection status report is a smart report that shows malicious email that was detected and blocked by Exchange Online Protection. This report is very useful for viewing email identified as malware or a phishing attempt over time. Keep in mind up to 90 days, and it enables security administrators
to identify trends or determine whether policies need a specific adjustment. A quick side note, a threat protection status report is available to customers who have either
Microsoft Defender for Office 365
or Exchange Online Protection EOP. However, the information that is displayed in the threat protection status report for
Microsoft Defender for Office 365
customers will likely contain different data than what EOP customers might see. I give you just an example. EOP customers can view information about malware detected in mail, but not the information about malicious files detected in SharePoint Online, OneDrive or Microsoft Teams, an AT-specific capability. On the other hand, we have the malware detections report. The malware detections report shows how many incoming and outgoing messages were detected as containing malware for your organization. The top malware report shows the various kinds of malware that was specifically detected by Exchange Online. When you hover over a wedge in the pie chart, you can see the name of a kind of malware and how many messages were detected as having that malware. You can click or tap the report to open it in a new browser window where you can get more detailed view about the report itself. The next is the top senders and receptions report. The top senders and receptions report is a pie chart showing your top email senders. You can go through that to view this report in the Security and Compliance Center if you go to Reports, Dashboard and Top Senders and Receptions. When you hover over the wedge in the pie chart, you can see a count of messages sent or received. As before, we have the option to click or tap the report to open it in a new browser window, where we also can get more detailed information and about these topics. And you can use the show data for lists to choose whether to view data for top senders, receivers, spam recipients and malware recipients. You can also view who received malware that was detected by Exchange Online Protection. The next report is a spoof detections report. The spoof detections report shows you how many spoof mail messages were detected and of those which ones were considered good. Spoof mail done for legitimate business reasons, for example. You can go through the same process. You also can hover over a day in the chart and you can see how many spoof mail messages came through this day, and obviously you can click or tap the report as before to get more details about this information. The next report is a spam detections report that shows all the spam content blocked by Exchange Online. Messages are counted per message and not per recipient. For example, if an email message was sent to 100 recipients in your organization, it is counted as one message. You have also the same hover over feature on the chart itself, and you can see how many items were blocked a day, as well as how those items are categorized. So let's make an example. You can see how many spam messages were filtered and how many items came from a blocked Internet Protocol IP address. So you can also click or tap the report as before to gather also more information about the details and all of that stuff. The user reported messages report shows information about email messages that users have reported as junk, phishing attempts or good mail by using the report message add-in. There are details available for each message, including the delivery reason, such as a spam policy exception or mail flow rule configured for your organization. You can also go through all the details of this topic. In order, so it's just an important note, in order for the user-reported message report to work correctly, audit logging must be turned on for your Microsoft 365 environment. This we have already discussed in the previous sections. In order to view and use the reports described before, you must have an appropriate role assigned for both the Security and Compliance Center and the Exchange Admin Center. For the Security and Compliance Center, you must have one of the following roles assigned, as also mentioned before the other topics. So we have the organization management, the security administrator, which can be assigned in the Azure Active Directory Admin Center, and the security reader. For Exchange Online, you must have one of the following roles assigned in either the Exchange Admin Center or with the PowerShell CMD-lets of the Exchange Online PowerShell module. The organization management, the view-only organization management, the view-only restriction role, or the compliance management role itself.
In this demo we will take a look on the walkthrough of security reports and alerts, that you have a great overview about that and that you are able to use it on your scenarios.
In this demonstration we will take a short look on the report section, what we have inside of the Microsoft 365 security part. We have specifically the reports in the security control section, where we have the overview about the users that are at risk, the global admins that need to be viewed. We see the policy matches, specifically the devices, the ASR rules are on or not, and the devices that are at risk, for example, and the defense against high profile threats, non-compliant devices, and so on, and malware detections. All of that stuff is directly here inside of this report, so you can just drill down here to this section to get all the information around that, including all the necessary things you need to go through. Obviously you can go also to the ADP support or the ADP portion, where it's included here in the security section as well. So what you have there, you will get directly the information, which files maybe are as an attachment, which are what's reported, safe attachments, topics, and so on. Then we have also the reports into the client, or better saying in the compliance section, where we have all the information around the labeling actions, what's going on, what sensitive and retention labels. Then we have the organizational data, all the DLP matches, false positives as well. Here we have the Office 365 Shadow IT detection as well included from Cloud App Security. And we see all the compliance topics that we reached against the different scenarios in our environment. So we have also here a lot of things directly into the place and can work directly to drill down. For example, if I want to go through, I directly jump into the section in Portal of Cloud App Security, and then I can jump and identify the different things what I need to correct inside of this specific space. For example, here the OAuth apps, we have one that user is authorized, and it has a lot of for example permissions. So we can take a closer look, because this has read, write, Intune permissions, and so on. So that's really a highly bunch of applications. So if you detect something like that, and is an application, maybe a user registers, you need to act on that, because this exposes a lot of data and specifically out of your things, and it gives a lot of power to an external users, and this you should really avoid, that you have a data leakage over an API, over an OAuth application inside of your infrastructure. Now let's spend a few moments about the Microsoft 365 Enterprise Administrator Expert certification. I will give you an idea on how to go there and what is a specific learning path for it. I will give you some ideas about the exam basics, what you can do, what you can work on, and I will put a few moments really on the exam objectives that you exactly know where you need to put your 100% energy in studying the stuff.
Okay, let's take a closer look on the Microsoft 365 certifications. With this role-based approach, obviously, we have the Associate level with the Microsoft 365 Modern Desktop Administrator, the Messaging Administrator, Secure Administrator, the Developer, and the Teams Administrator. On the Expert level, on this track, obviously we have this Microsoft 365 Enterprise Admin certification with the MS100 and the MS101, where we are in. So, and on the Fundamentals level, it's for the basics, really for the basics, is this MS900 exam itself.
As you can see, there are many ways to gather a modern workplace certification. Like on the left side, the fundamentals, in the middle the associate that are represented by the modern desktop administrator, teamwork administrator, messaging administrator, or for example the security administrator. And on the right side we see the expert level, the Microsoft 365 Certified Enterprise Administrator Expert, where we want to go there and want to prepare ourselves for this certification. Now that we have seen the different types of certifications in the field of modern workplace, we will go through the learning path for the specific Enterprise Administrator and Expert level. On the left side you see the different certifications, and in the middle the skills and knowledge that will be verified in the exams MS100 and in the exam MS101. In this specific field, the Microsoft 365 Mobility and Security, we are already in this course, and we see that we need to discuss modern device services, the Microsoft 365 Security and Threat Management topics, and last but not least, the Microsoft 365 Governance and Compliance. And for this we will prepare in this course to get all the information and the ideas what we need to study, which skills will be verified in the MS101. And later on, or if you already pass it, you can do the MS100 and you will be on track for the Microsoft 365 Certified Enterprise Administrator Expert. Let me give you some exam basics or tips and tricks for your MS101 exam. The exam specifically contains between 40 to 60 questions. So some questions are worth more than 1 point. This is typically for Microsoft exams itself. So please answer all the questions and be sure there's no penalty for guessing. So if you're lucky you answer the question right now in the correct way. Try it is the best way to go forward. And on the other hand, some questions really cannot be skipped, so there's no capability to don't answer the question. I'm a little bit special if it comes to the items for review. I personally don't do that, only if I only see the chance that maybe later on I know the correct answer for it. And I only change answer if I'm 100% sure that it comes to a correct result. Otherwise, I leave it as it is. Plan always like 180 minutes because the exam is 150 minutes for answering your questions, and there are basically 30 minutes for instructions, comments, score reporting, and all the other stuff. The exam special is built on not just multiple choice questions. It contains build lists, hot areas, or drag and drop fields where you need to answer the questions. So, and also be aware that there are case studies. A little tip about the case studies from my side. I just read the things partial. First, really this is my recommendation, it's your personal opinion to do it or not. Read the question, read what they specific ask for, and then go to the specific field in the case study and read the stuff carefully and then start to answer the question. From my opinion, and I wrote something like 70 exams in my career and just in the field of Microsoft, reading too much in the beginning doesn't help you really. The MS-101 contains the following 3 study areas: implement modern device services, implement Microsoft 365 security and threat management, and manage Microsoft 365 governance and compliance. I always recommend that you read the actual exam objectives on the Microsoft certification website. To get a bit more ideas about what is really asked in the exam, we go through the different study areas and I give you a little overview about it. In the topic implement modern device services, you specifically need to know the things about mobile device management, MDM, with Intune. The management of the device compliance, and then specifically the topic of conditional access policies. On the other hand, we need to know about the planning for devices and apps. What about the Microsoft Store for Business? What is device co-management? What in specific is mobile application management? And to close this section, we need to know about the planning of a Windows 10 deployment, like Windows as a service, what you can do with Windows 10 Enterprise, and then specifically the security features of Windows 10 Enterprise. The second field, implementing Microsoft 365 security and threat management, contains basically the implementation of cloud app security. So about the policies, what are connected apps, what are you can doing with alerts, or and specifically with traffic logs. On the other hand, we need to take a look on the
Microsoft Defender for Identity
and the different implementation forms, the policies, and how you can handle or monitor incidents. The end of the section builds the management of security reports and alerts, like what you can do with Azure Identity Protection, and specifically on tracing and reporting some stuff, and how you configure the Azure Identity Protection over the dashboard and the alerts. The last section, managing the Microsoft 365 governance and compliance, contains the data loss prevention features. What you can do with DLP, what are the policies, which exceptions you can set, and how you can monitor and manage DLP policy matches. A very big field as well in the exam and in this section is the implementation of Azure Information Protection. So you really need to know about planning an IP solution, what about the on-premise rights management connector, the integration into Windows Information Protection, and specifically about the different types of clients, policies, and what about the tenant key. Furthermore, you need to know about the data governance, and specifically what you really need to focus on is about retention, about the different backup types, and all this stuff. And we close this section as well with the management of e-discovery, where and how you can get enabled to search content by using the Security and Compliance Center, for example. How you can do an in-place and a legal hold, for example, and basically how you can configure e-discovery.
we have this recommended certification about the exam MS-101, the Microsoft 365 mobility and security part in it. Always, as I mentioned in these webinars or in these courses, really take a closer look on the docs.microsoft.com website really to see what the skill is measured, the content about implementation of modern device services, the implementation about Microsoft 365 security and threat management, and the governance and compliance features which builds the main structure for this specific exam which you can book.
Now at the end of this module I want to give you some information about how you can go further. There's a really great self-paced learning resource for MS-101 on the Learn platform, on the Microsoft Learn platform. So it's done, and I want to really give you a big thank you that you have done the journey with me. Hopefully I see you next time, and I wish you the best.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today. I hope our participants will really benefit from it. And a very big thank you to all our participants for being there with us throughout this series. Also, as an additional resource, let me remind you that this series on Microsoft 365 Mobility and Security MS-101 will also be available for you to watch on demand at aka.ms/enablevts and aka.ms/training center. In fact, you can find more virtual training series available for your on-demand consumption there. We wish you all the very best once again. Goodbye.